Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
That is Ms. Francine Henderson, the administrator for the Auburn Avenue Research Library on African American culture and history. I'll leave that in that. My name is Dr. Candy Tate. I'm the assistant director for the Center for Creativity and Arts at Emory University. And on behalf of our director, Leslie Taylor, we would love to let you know that we appreciate the collaboration between the library and Emory University to be able to come over and bring our illustrious guest, resident artist, into the community to have this talk tonight. What I'd like to do is to just give you a little introduction on our speakers for the evening. We've got Dr. Dwight Andrews, who is going to interview Paul Carter Harrison. But Dwight is a native of Detroit, Michigan. So we always have to say, where are you from? He studied at music at the University of Michigan, and he also studied had his master's in divinity from Yale University, and then received his PhD in music theory from Yale. He's ordained as a Christian minister in 1978 for the United Christian Church of Christ, and we have him here as our minister from First Congregational. During his Yale years, he taught music in the department and an African American Studies program, and we know that he had a residency with Yale Theater. And then as a result of all that, he's worked with playwrights like August Wilson. He's worked on Broadway productions, The Piano Lesson, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, 7 Guitars. He's worked with playwright Pearl Clay, and on and on. He's been in the US, in Europe, in Iceland, and so he loves to combine his preaching, teaching, community work, music, together for this single public ministry. So he will be our interviewer, and our interviewee is the illustrious Paul Carter Harrison. And Paul is a native of New York, award-winning playwright, director, theoretician, and he's published in both Europe and the United States. And he comes to us through Atlanta when on his way to Panama, and then back to Atlanta and then up to New York. So we kind of his in-between stop. He's written numerous plays, worked with the Negro Ensemble Company, and most recently, the Great MacDaddy, that you have a description of, is opening tonight. So we are very pleased that we were able to have him here as opposed to there. But because of Sandy, the date got moved back, but he had this commitment with us. So we look forward to hearing more about all of his work, Doxology Opera, Glory Crossing, the Drama of Nomo, just to name a few. But most recently, he's here in Atlanta with Emory to engage scholars on this topic of a critical vocabulary for African diaspora expressivity. I won't go into any more detail, but ask these two great gentlemen to come up and let the discussion begin.
As our guests come up, I just want to remind you that we have a fantastic staff here, and there are some of the Brother Harrison's books in our display case in the back. Take a look. We always also try to have a bibliography or a reading list that guides you through. So take a look at those things as well.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? We're going to try to keep from using these microphones, at least in our hands. I'm Dwight Andrews, and thank you, Candy, for that wonderful introduction. I'm not going to serve simply as the interviewer, but perhaps just a facilitator, so that we can really hear a lot from our guest, Paul Carter Harrison, my dear friend. Tonight I'm not with you as much as minister, as really a theater artist. And as theater artist, I've known Paul almost my entire career, so I'd say about 35 years.
Right.
But this is a wonderful opportunity for us to have a unique engagement with really a pretty rare theater person. Paul is one of those theater artists who both writes, he directs, he teaches. He also has served as a cultural critic. He thinks deeply about the work. And I have to go back to some of our first meetings. When I started working with August Wilson in the early 80s, we had a process where the play would begin at Yale Drama School, and then we'd take it around to various theaters around the country before it would hit New York. And so invariably, Paul would show up sometimes in Chicago, Seattle, LA, but it would always be Paul in the back, and Paul would always have the deep questions after the plays. And I can remember when we did Joe Turner, we must have stayed up half the night arguing about Joe Turner. And I just find him to be a very engaging intellect who really thinks deeply not only about theater, but all of art and creative expression. It's his book, Drama of Nomo, that really made a big impression on me, to find the unity, if you will, of African arts and expression. So why dance and music and movement and the visual are all one seamless act really was a perspective that I got from you, Paul. So I think we're really lucky to have him come and give us a conversation about what is Black theater. Certainly we can ask that question from a variety of perspectives, but Paul, I'm going to let you tell us what's at stake. What's the conversation about Black theater?
Okay, we'll try to do that. First of all, I want to thank you, all of you, for inviting me here, because I don't do this kind of intimate conversation publicly. I mean, very often. But in any case, I'm going to try to deal with this question, because it's coming up quite frequently. What is Black theater? I'm going to start by saying that, in another half an hour from now, one of the plays that has launched me from 35 years ago is about to reopen and being revived off Broadway in New York. And about a half an hour, they'll have the opening curtain. And I'm sitting here sharing this conversation with you. But that happens to be a very important play as far as launching me forward. The great MacDaddy. And then, of course, just on the surface alone, he was all a great MacDaddy. What it's about. In fact, the director, when he first got the play, he's a white director. So when he first got it, and he was looking through it, he said, well, and he was telling people, the play is about a young pimp who goes across to America trying to find his way. He goes across the American landscape, so I pull him in. And to pull him in like this, it's not about a black pimp. It's about a narcissistic young man who has to learn how to become a man. He thinks he's a MacDaddy, but he's not a MacDaddy. You see? So with that was our first encounter between me and that particular director about the play. The play is important because it also, I had an opportunity to use some aesthetic devices that had germinated out of my working, writing the book, The Drama of Nomo, which speaks to what has been retained from Africa in our particular experiences in this country, and shows up in what we do. And it doesn't mean dressing up Africa. It simply means that there are certain gestures and certain kinds of language, use of language, certain kinds of way of giving expression to movement that really is informed by being an African personality. And that African personality, not singularly, but it's been cultivated by a whole community. And that cultivation starts by, in other words, the whole action begins inside the community base, whether it be southern, northern, whatever. And in fact, you might even see different kinds of stylizations of this Africa if you're going to function, if you look at it, look at the expressive techniques of the northern person as opposed to the person in the south. And it is that spread out, but still at the very foundation is Africa. So it was not important then to say, when we do a play, I got to look like an African as we understand an African looks. We just look like whatever you look like, but the expressive attitude of it will reflect this Africanity without your absolutely having not like I told the director, he wanted to put, the current production, he wanted to put a djembe drummer in the middle of the piece. I said, for what? It's not about Africa. He thought you have to dress up Africa. I said, no, this is not Africa. It'll come. All the musician has to do is beat on the guitar. All you have to do is slap your thighs, and you got the drum elements. You don't have to do it. In other words, it's things like that. You know, it's just curiosity. All right, but so macdaddy is a very important launch, based on a story of Amos Tutuola, the Nigerian, what would you call him, Rio, I suppose, a storyteller. And on his story, which is a very fascinating story about such an odyssey of a young man and his encounters and what it takes for this young man to become a complete man. I found that fascinating back in the 70s, early 70s, right after I had finished Drama of Lemons. That story fascinated me because I thought it was a dilemma of all black young men in America. So I sort of redid that whole story around how that would be a parallel within the African American experience. And I would imagine there might be more rites of passage in places like the Caribbean, perhaps, for a young man to go through than there might be in the United States, with the one exception that the unfortunate rite of passage is through the gangs, in terms of moving toward maleness. The most important thing for me, though, since I came up in the theater as a youngster, I didn't come up in the theater. I was not in theater. I was in phenomenology and psychology and phenomenology and philosophy. I was not involved in theater. I liked the theater. And I went to the theater as an 18, 19-year-old kid. And I was very bored with the American theater. I said, why am I looking at these plays? I mean, they were all right. I said, yeah, I guess I went because there were friends of mine who were intellectual young guys and girls. They said, have you seen that play by O'Neill? I said, no, we'll see it. So I went to see it. And I was happy. Then I discovered plays like, the first play that really caught my imagination was, as a potential writer, was Lorraine Hansberry's play. And I saw that, I said, ooh, now that has some possibilities. I saw some other things, and I saw things in that play that were never recorded by reviewers, by critics. And I mean, they just stop there, for example. Where my thinking starts to go. I look at this play, and it seems to be on the surface because it's done in a social realist style. It's dealing with the realism. And the way it is constructed in terms of the movement of the play, it is an American narrative of the Negro. The Negro who lives in poverty and must move to the suburbs. That is the narrative. And the play is structured that way. So the final thing is, they got to the suburbs. Now, there's a scholar, a black scholar, what's his name, who wrote the book, The Crisis of the Negro. Cruz. Now Cruz right away, this is what, 1957 or so, 59. Cruz right away said, this is ridiculous. But Cruz was coming from the position of a socialist.
Right.
Being a socialist, he thought that was not a very good kind of way of examining the black social purpose, and he said, he was very unhappy with it. But I was not unhappy with the play. I liked the play. But then as I became more familiar with phenomenology by the time I got into grad school, and I understood a few more things about how to look at sort of phenomena or spiritual ideas, I began to look at the play differently. This play on the surface looks like it's about this movement from receiving some money and then going on. The money is lost by bad choices and going on to the suburbs. Hallelujah, we got there. But if you look at it very carefully, and I think that this is what she was insinuating, because that woman had a great sense of Africa. She was one of the first people I knew of that had a clear sense of Africa. if you look at it very carefully, who is the real, who sets up the play? What is the force that drives the play? The force that drives the play is the money. The insurance money. Where did the insurance money come from? Came from whom? The dead father. Who then is in the house all the time? The dead father. The spirit force, this dead trickster figure. It's a trickster figure. That's what he does. He says, all right, here's $10,000. What y'all gonna do with it? And everything happens the way it normally might happen. There is a disintegration. People have their own particular interest in what that money is about, how to use the money, and things start to fall apart. And it goes to the point of absolute near devastation when the boy loses the money and the mother is ready to completely destroy him. And what does she have to do in order to destroy him? She has to call on the spirit of the father. Calls him down. Calls him. When she calls him down, there is harmony. And she says, tells the daughter, don't you ever talk to this boy in such a way, he can't feel like a man. So the important thing was not to move to the suburbs, but how do you keep a family together? That's a different purpose altogether. I think Harold Cruz would have agreed with that. But that was nowhere in the critical analysis of what the work was about. That potential for that particular narrative to show up, as opposed to the one that's traditional American narrative for the Negro enterprise, social enterprise. So having observed that, the next thing I saw was the blacks from Janae. And I said, oh, this can happen. This is something. Look at this ritual piece. And it made more sense as far as not because it was didactic, but also because of its ability to take a kind of rhetorical message and give it a kind of heightened sense of what that would be, and bring it, and the accessibility, my accessibility to it was much greater. And I was a very young person, and it just completely floored me. So I started looking at works that dealt with more ritual. I looked at Beckett, Waiting for Godot. The ritual style of that was very, very compelling. Then I went and I looked at Sartre, his No Exit. The mystery. So for me it was a mystery play. Not a play about being in hell so much as how do I get out of the situation. It became a major mystery. It somehow opened or awakened in me something else, other than the fact that there are these, other than the way it was being described, as a kind of a strange environment. I understood precisely what was going on there. Okay, then that led me to thinking about plays that had one of my dear colleagues is in the room right now. I tell her all the time I love O'Neill's play, The Iceman Cometh, because to me that's has incredible kinds of ritualistic elements that move through it. But I'm not happy with O'Neill's Long-Day's Journey. And tonight I refuse to go see that play. I mean, I had seen it though.
Once was enough.
It was enough. I was not going to go through this catharsis, this indulgence, this singular family indulgence, uninteresting for me. Why do it? I mean, I did it once, but you're supposed to do it one time, maybe. Then I was mostly concerned with trying to find out how to start looking at what we do as African Americans. Once I got involved with writing, I mean, writing came sideways, hanging out with actors and hanging out with directors. When I was in graduate school, doing my research papers in phenomenology, and then in the summers doing my little plays.
But Paul, wait a minute now, because I want to take you back. I want to go back to Lorraine Hansberry, because your remarks were kind of revelatory to me. I've done that. I've done that play. I know that play inside and out. I did the revival on Broadway. I never thought about the the interpretation that you just gave. So let me just ask my question to see if I'm the only dope in the room. But do you think, is it Paul Carter Harrison who has a deep structural analysis of a play that allows you to see into that play, or do you think Hansberry herself envisioned what your understanding of that
I
structural
think so.
level?
Let me give you
You think
another.
so?
Let me give you. Look, I don't think it was a conscious thing. I'll give you an example. When, if any of you have seen the play, when does the play shift? When does it begin to shift, move to something else that's going to happen? It is after they have the brother comes home with the drunken,
Yeah.
goes to Africa. He does this little mock African thing.
Mm-hmm.
If that could have been a true enough, serious look at this invocative possibility of Africa, as opposed to being just a drunken kind of banter, because it serves the same purpose. But right after that, everything starts to shift in the play, starts to move. So she drops in these African elements. They're not accidents. She even talks about Africa. I mean, that conversation about Africa I had never heard before, where the African guy tells Beneath, "You're not ready for that, but you think you're ready to go to Africa. You're not really ready." She's all for it, you know. That conversation was new in the 50s. You know, it's not new now, but it's no. But just structurally, the way the piece is laid out, it's like a suppressed. It's a ritual that needs to come out. It's not happening.
Okay.
That's where anybody else wants to respond to that, because this was my particular hit on it. And I'm going to show you I'm going to get around to talking about August, because he's very familiar with August and he's done a lot of work with August. And as he knows, I've had many conversations with August about the works, and often told him things that he was listening to it and take heed, other things that said, I'm not listening to that. You know? I can understand, because I was just coming dragged right down the path. Listen, okay. All right, then, so the Great MacDaddy was important. It's an important night for me to be here with you guys at the same time. It's an important night because my play is about to become revived, and it's curious to me in this revival, how does it stand up? But I had to do a lot of rewriting to bring it up to date to this time, to refocus what it was doing. And I had this very interesting relationship with this director, this white director, who's very, very gifted and very, very imaginative. And his strength is his theatrical manipulation of the spaces. He understands all that, but he didn't understand any of the cultural stuff. Nothing, you know. And he has a black girlfriend. He thought he understood it, but he didn't. Not only that, he was also the artistic director of the what do you call it, the Classical Theater of Harlem, for 10 years, where they did magnificent kinds of experimental work on classical plays with black actors. And the whole shape of those pieces, it shifted it all around. It was not looking at the classical production of Shakespeare, but it was classical text, and he had the actors working very well. But every now and then he would do something that belonged inside of a closer look at an African American or African Caribbean cultural milieu, and he did not quite get it. And he even admitted to me recently, he said, you know, when I first started working on this play, he said, why am I doing this? Because there was just so many things by the time we finished the rehearsal period, which was last week. I'm talking about up until Sunday. Up until Wednesday. I was still sending notes. To look at that, not demanding anything. He said, you might want to take a look at that over there. Because he just didn't feel comfortable about, with that. Okay.
So, would you consider your work black theater?
No.
Okay.
Okay, not anymore. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you help?
I'll help you with that notion.
Help us.
I'll help you with that notion.
So what is black theater?
Well, I'm going to
From
go there.
your
We're going to go there. But here's the thing. Now let's go back to the '60s. In the middle '60s, in the middle '60s, Right after Baraka's play, Dutchman, there were two plays that set the movement off. Two plays that started the movement. Dutchman from Baraka, a very expressionistic piece. Definitely is not social realism.
It's kind of crazy.
It's a little bit on the negative side, but you got to make a ritual of it. But the thing that's powerful is the text. The powerful is it's a very powerful text. So it got a lot of traction, particularly at that moment when there's an incendiary social atmosphere in the United States. And they hear this text, and they say, my God, this is a whole other voice that we've never heard before. It's not Lorraine Hansberry. Okay. On the other hand, at the same time was Adrian Kennedy, who was clearly working in a very expressionistic way. And Adrian Kennedy, they said, the black folks said, that ain't black. When it was probably more black than anything else. Why? Because of the stylization of it. It had more indices or more intricate manipulation and more devices that belonged inside of African ritual than all the other plays. Certainly more so than Dutchman. Folks, reviewers or critics liked it for its abstract kind of expressionistic elements, but they didn't understand any of the African elements in it. They understood nothing about what the repetitions signify, or what the rhythms signify, or what in that piece they often miss. What are these particular, what is actually, what actually happens in the play? Has he been killed, or has he hung himself, really hung himself? I only saw one. In fact, there's one magnificent production I've seen of it. It was just about 3 years ago at Brown University, directed by Kim Moore, with a multi-racial cast with about 20 students. I mean, it was the most extraordinary production I've ever seen of that play because it did it in multi-vocal. Everybody would take anybody's text and use it. They could just, anybody's text, and play it off of his text. Everybody, in different kind of, and they would repeat the same things over and over again in a different kind of shape. They would shape it for a scene this way, take the same text, do another form something else over there, and it was constantly doing this. It was just an amazing, production, just dealing with it. So those were the two important plays. That was 64, 60, around that time. So right about that time, it launched an interest by a lot of writers to write for the stage. People had never really been on the stage before. And it came out of the poets movement. The poets wanted to write plays. And so they started writing these plays, and some of them were very, very, clearly very, very political and didactic. And then he's trying to form a rationale for putting them in a stage situation. Well, they said, well, Leroy Jones does these kind of things. He gets up, he has these poems, he has music behind him, and the rest of it. Let's do that. But let's do it now as a play. And those plays, most of them are not very good. But they were very potent and powerful at giving lessons at the time. The lessons had to be heard. And so people became very excited about that. They wanted to be part of that. And so they began to think of this as, quote unquote, the black theater. It was in reaction to oppression. A theater that was in direct reaction to oppression. And then it had to have certain things. It had to speak directly to black people. It also had to have, in essence, aside from the lesson, it needed to have an articulation of black interests, might I say. It had to be quote unquote revolutionary. Well, let me give you an example of a revolutionary play. And I remember once I was teaching at Howard in 1968, and one of the playwrights had been doing a street drama, a street play. And it was published, and people were coming around, and they were very interested in him because he was a revolutionary. It was very popular in those days to be a revolutionary. And this particular play was about a young man a young man's mother stops him in the street And he would do these on corners, street corners in Washington, D.C. And the young man's mother would say, son, you needn't do this. You're going to get yourself hurt, you don't have to be out here, and you know, life is not that bad, you know. And he referred to her as an anti-revolutionary. And he cursed her out and said, Mom, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You know, you are the enemy, mother. And he runs this rap about the mother being the enemy. And then he finally says to the audience, people who might gather on the street corner to look in, we're looking at this sight, this spectacle on the street corner. And he would turn to them and say, let's kill her, let's off her, let's off her. So that's when the people did what? What did they do? They walked away. You don't off your mother, come on. You know, so when he came to my class to talk about this, he came, the students wanted to see him, so he came to the class. And I said, well, how many people were left? Well, they didn't know, but we tried to get them to stay. I said, you really think that black people are going to off their mother in a revolutionary stance and revolutionary kind of a posture? You know? And I had to clean that up for the students because they were very excited about him having the audacity to speak in these terms. That was not a great play by no stretch of imagination, but revolution was the fervor of revolution was the thing. So, but they called that black theater. See? That was called black theater. By the time I hit I mean, when I've been living in Europe and I come back and I hit this, I come out. My first play that caught attention was in 1969, Tabernacle. And it was a very ritualized, highly ritualized piece. In fact, I borrowed the notion of total theater from Peter Brook. I don't know if you guys know Peter Brook is, and I had these multimedia kind of things going on. It was very successful. And a lot of the revolutionaries, they said, well, you know, it's a little bit obscurant, isn't it? I said, why is it obscurant? Because you're not speaking directly to the people. You're not telling the people what they're supposed to do. It's not prescriptive. It doesn't do any of that. And you're not talking to them. And it doesn't really qualify as black theater. I said, this is a ritual theater. And I had that argument. But then Larry Neal came out in '68 with his essay, and he was a friend, and he said, black theater, was a manifesto. It was a very important manifesto, because he tried to create a kind of definition of what the black theater should be doing. It has to be work that has its own mythology, its own cosmology, its own critique, which is the most important thing, the iconology. So iconology, the critique, cosmology, and the mythology. Those are the four, you might say, that's the undergirding of anything that we call black theater, or black play. So that made sense to me. It made sense to me that the iconography, not the didactic part of it, but the iconography and the mythology, which we often forget because we're so used to transferring our private lives into a public space on stage in social realism without understanding some larger symbolic way of referencing what we do. And that's what I think theater does best. I used to love Wagner. I still do. I mean, Wagner to me was grand and mysterious. And I look at this and say, oh my God, you know, okay. But so it's African ritual and African work. You see enough African work and the mystery of it and the scale of it, the way it moves across, you know, time, how it crosses time. It's not static time. You know, all those things were very, very impressive to me. So at a certain moment, I said, okay, I'll start framing these ideas a little bit longer, and I ended up writing the drama of Damo. But really, I started because because of Larry's observations. He, being a poet, I said, okay, you're right. So I started looking at the whole question of mythology. What is the role of mythology? What mythologies are being brought to bear when you do a play? What mythology is being brought to bear with this silly play that's coming here in town now called Mountaintop. I'm gonna have to castigate that. I'm sorry, but I have to. I'm sorry, I have to. I cannot leave here. Can't leave here without saying that. This is Atlanta.
But go ahead and unfold it, what you
Well, it is, the thing is, what mythology and what symbology and what iconography is being advanced in that particular piece. It is a demystification. What it does more than anything else, it's a demystification of King. It's not the question of it, whether you're supposed to, you cannot interrogate King. We can all interrogate any iconic figure. It can be interrogated. But given the scale of this particular icon, you do not spend time playing around with his sexual excesses to be able, and that's too cheap, it's a cheap shot.
Yeah.
It's a cheap shot. For 80 minutes, for 60 minutes out of 80 minutes, you can spend just doing that. It's a cheap shot. And it demystifies him, brings him down to a level, I mean, who cares whether he pees or smokes a cigarette?
Right.
Who cares? I mean, it's absolutely, it was just stunning. And I was never a civil rights person. I was not a King person. I was a Malcolm person as opposed to a King person. But I'm looking at this extraordinary force that has done what he has done in his lifetime, to see it be played around with. Instead, she should have found a way to build a mythology around that icon that's larger than life, and that's what she should have been doing, dealing with that. That's more important. With that particular figure. Because it's just a grand ideogram, as the king, you know, it really is. So, I mean, you don't do that with the Pope. Who cares whether the Pope pees, or smokes a cigarette, or has a boyfriend? Who cares? He be the Pope. Pope do what Pope do. You don't care about the rest of that. You want him to come out and be shining and sterling, and bless, and be able to bless you. That's what you want from the Pope. You a kind of mystification and a kind of mythologizing of that particular icon. It's very, very important.
So Paul, this is very powerful. So given the 4 criteria from Larry, the mythology.
Actually, it's mythology, symbology, iconography, and critique. Now let's look at the critique. And with this play, the same play. What is the critique? You have to advance your own critique. Every author, poet, playwright, painter, offers a critique, a statement about his or her place in the universe, how one responds to the universe. There is a critique from a particular point of view. You don't write it from your point, I wouldn't write it from your point of view, write it from mine. But I could deal with it, which is the African part of me, and most people, by the way, from their own cultural stance, is a collective critique. One that is supported by the community that they're coming from. You know, if you're coming from an Irish community, you write, I mean, Long Day's Journey into Night, perfect, as far as I'm concerned, for the Irish community, you know, whatever. It has universal themes in it. Don't misunderstand me. It has universal themes, but it's from a critique from that particular position. That's unquestionable. What is troublesome is when black writers let the critique simply become, they simply pander to audiences who are outside of their own collective experience. That ridiculous play called what do you call it, the fly thing? What is it?
Stick fly?
Have any of you seen that or heard of it or read it? I mean, talking about something that is not, I mean, why would you spend on this intelligent woman, by the way, very bright woman. I was responsible for her having her first play done in Chicago. I liked it. It was her first play. I moved a lot of things to get that play on. Got her a very good director out of California, Shirley Joe Finney. Did the whole thing. Very big success. Then after that, she started doing all these little funny little things, little funny plays, little corny plays, and that stick fly was the worst case of pandering I'd ever seen.
So what does that say about the theater world? I mean, given Mountaintop, which was
Well,
what's in New York,
yeah.
and Stick Fly was also.
Yeah, well, it's popular. It's, in other words, it's easier to produce those kind of things for popular. It's commercial. It's commodification of the black experience. The commodification of the black experience is the thing that's most painful. And unfortunately, black theaters or black companies do not have the money to develop work. So what they do, this is a painful thing, what they do is work that's been produced by white theaters. And the white theaters, when I say the white theaters, I'm only saying white because that's what they are. They are big institutions, like the Lions is a big institution, or the Lincoln Center. Large regional theaters get the isolated black work, produce it in accordance with their particular subscription base in that particular community, whether it's Atlanta, whether it's DC or whatever, it's for that particular subscription base, it is safe to produce that particular work. And once that is done, the black companies, they say, I'd like to do it too. Because they can't afford to develop the work. You know, they don't do, all of my work was developed in universities. Almost all, except the earlier plays. Once I came to the United States, I developed my work at universities like Howard, Sacramento State. I take the time, I take a whole semester to work on my plays until I get it right, you know.
So what's great black theater? Who's doing great black theater now?
Well, let me go a little bit further.
Okay.
August Wilson potentially was doing great black theater. Potentially was doing, but I don't think, I guess I need to qualify what do I mean by black theater as opposed to not black theater. I said I have recently decided to take myself out of that particular reference to what my work is about. Because that work, to me, black theater is framed by something called, which is basically the domestic drama. It's basically the domestic drama. It's not black theater, it's black drama. I got this drama in my household. My mama won't do this, and my daddy won't do that. And here comes my sister with her boyfriend, or here comes my sister with her girlfriend. And so there's all these black dramas. That has nothing to do with theater. It has to do with taking a slice of life and putting it up on the stage, and that is the end of it. You know, there's no theater in that. It might be satisfying. It might have popular appeal. Can't question that. I mean, Tyler Perry has an enormous audience. Who am I to say you shouldn't do that, you should do that? I'm not going to go, but there are a lot of people who go and see Tyler Perry. And they should see him if they're entertained and they're amused by it. I don't call that theater, but it too has been lumped into the rubric of black theater. I ain't over there then. If Tyler is in it, I'm not there. I really am. You talking, Tyler's in it too? Oh no, I'm not over there. I'm doing something over here. Nothing to do with that.
Okay, so I want to, as we continue, because I think you are certainly giving us the straight scoop, I want to make sure that we involve all of us in this conversation, because I think we can kind of collectively interrogate Paul and get a very, very rich conversation.
Don't beat me up in here, no.
No, but I know that all of you are, as he mentions these things, these ideas and these topics, these plays and authors, all of us have feelings. Yes, dear.
Well, you started to say you thought that August Wilson could potentially, his work could potentially be great black theater, but then you didn't finish what you meant by potential.
What I mean is that it's greater than what I call black, what I'm calling.
Well, what makes
what
it?
has been configured as black theater, something that started back in the 60s with the poets, moved into some very, very exciting work up until about 1980, and then it went into this commodification of the black experience, and it then became less of a poetic opportunity to do the black experience. It became something, slices of life, put it on the stage, put it out there. So I'm simply saying that August came in through the 80s, but there was a heightened, for everyone, a very heightened sense of what that black experience was all about. And even there, he was far beyond what the critics were allowing him to be. In other words, they would not pay attention to the underpinnings of August Wilson's work. They only dealing with the scale of his language, the poetic text, the largeness of these characters, and it was, whoa. They knew it was not that other stuff that was going on over there. They was, you know, they definitely knew it was not Tyler Perry. But they took it over into something, they accepted it as part of, in fact, they didn't just accept it. They grabbed it, appropriated it, and tried to confine it to people like Arthur Miller. It's ridiculous. Now, that doesn't mean Arthur Miller's not a great man. Arthur Miller is a great playwright. I mean, he's a great American playwright. But they tried to say, oh, this work is just like Arthur Miller's work. Well, it's not like Arthur Miller's work. It really is not. But that's the way what they did with August. That's why I said it's almost a great. He's a great writer, but not necessarily in the sense of that rubric of the black theater has been configured up until about right in through this period, after 1980, the way it's taken shape. It's not the same thing. Adrian Kennedy is not in that. There are several others, of which we don't have to go into, but I want to stay with August, because most of you know August's work. Did I answer part of the question or all of it?
Well, what is the underpinning that you're seeing?
Okay, you're going to get me there. You know how to see. Now, see, this is my colleague over here. My colleague is not letting me have my rhythms. You know, she's gonna force me up into her rhythm. See, she's gonna say, stop. Well, go to the next thing.
You can do it in any rhythm you want.
Okay, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna come to that question. Okay, here's what it is, and hopefully I'm responding to both your inquiries. Yeah, there is this whole question, what is black? Well, I tried to explain to you what happened after the 1980s. It became just simply commodification of the black experience, is what I call it. And in that commodification, we no longer saw efforts at making theater, but only making drama, or producing drama. That's the main difference. And so that, so what I'm telling the black playwrights who are doing this, recently I had a couple of years ago, a meeting at Arena Stage with 30 black playwrights who were supposed to come there to sit around and discuss how to get their works more exposed to the American public. And I told them, I said, before we start the conversation, I want to say this. Almost all of you, and of course I'm the elder in the group, because all young playwrights are like between 25 and 40. I'm only about 45, but they, you know, I'm an elder in it. So I said, look, what we're talking about, we're going to start a conversation, it's going to be a 2-day conversation. Most of you, 90% of you who are sitting in this room, of the 30, write social realism, and you are writing in the American canon, and you should make people stop addressing your plays as black theater. You should tell them what you're doing is American theater, and they should buy into you the same way they buy into any other American playwright, and get the money that they give to the American playwrights so you're not marginalized. You don't have to stay marginalized, but you got to frame yourself, I'm in the American tradition. Why am I not on that stage every year? Now, I said, on the other hand, now, I am not in that tradition. That's what makes the distinction. I wasn't just saying that just to be rhetorical. I said, I don't work over there, so I understand why you don't have me in the house. You over here, Paul. But these folks, 90% of these 30 playwrights are writing in the tradition that we're working in. And my understanding that they want to stop being called, or letting themselves be called, black theater writers. Contradictions. Go ahead.
Thank you. Do you think that non-African Americans or non-black playwrights don't write dramatizations based upon their experience?
If I understand you correctly, you want to do
Because you
everybody writes according to their particular experience.
Right.
Well, my concern is the construction of the writing, the construction of it. So there's one thing to give a kind of story about my experience and just leave it like that, conversation, put it out there. But now when I start to reconstruct the story, how do I do that? To appeal to some other kind of sensibilities. How do I appeal to your spirit, to your soul, if you have the word? James Brown appeals to my soul, right? James Brown doesn't sing a melody. James Brown has a repetition and a rhythm that goes directly to my heart, and not to my heart, it goes to my soul before he touches my heart. He touches the soul, or the spirit becomes released, and then I can feel it in my heart. I mean, I'm quite serious about that. I mean, I'm not just playing around. I'm not, you know, and that's the way, I mean, I can see James Brown as a formidable marker on just how ideas are expressed inside of African American or African Caribbean kinds of expression. You know, John Coltrane. I told the actors working in macdaddy right now. They were playing. I told the actor was having trouble with the speech, a long speech, not a long speech, just a half page. Not an August Wilson type of speech, but a half a page. This guy, the director said, "Paul, this is taking too long, it's taking too long." I said, "He's not doing it right, that's why." He says, "It's taking too long." He says, "He's stopping the action." So I don't know what the actor asked about. I did something, I violated a rule. I told the actors in the beginning, don't talk to me about what you're doing. If you've got an issue, talk to your director, I'll talk to him. But the director didn't understand me. And I kept saying, he just needs to like get to the pace and stop all those internal beats in between, and breathing and breaking it, trying to make it his personal. I said, look, listen, play it like Jackie McLean. He said, what? Play the text like Jackie McLean plays it. Not like Coltrane, but like Jackie McLean. Just go for it like Jackie would go for it. He said, oh. I just gave him one thing. The director wouldn't know that. He wouldn't know that. That text, I didn't tell him how to do it. Just go for Jackie McLean. That's where that goes. You know, it doesn't go with, then I felt and I looked. I said, what? He was doing the Stanislavski stuff, you know, all the Stanislavski stuff was going on and everything. You don't need all those beats. Just go ahead and play it. Play the tune. It's written like a tune. The text is written like a tune. This text is written with the rhythms in it. You had to play those rhythms. Am I answering your question? Because your concern was, all people have a story to tell from a very personal and their personal lives reflect their collective sensibilities too. In other words, if you talk to a Chinese person, he's not talking generalized America, he's talking from the Chinese sensibility, Chinese family, Chinese collectivity, but in the personal way that he's experiencing maybe coming here tonight, you see? And the thing is, I'm trying to tell Black authors, don't run away from who you are or what you're about as a human being. Don't think you must always somehow decorate your sensibilities, decorate your impulses to make them appear to be part of something else. That's not you. Yeah, just a gentleman here,
Yeah, okay, so I hate to jump back on the, okay, I hate to jump back on the August Wilson thing.
Okay, jump one.
But I'm intrigued by this idea of the difference between Black theater and Black drama. And something that I've noticed through August's work, just looking at his work, and this is not at all to dismiss Lloyd Richards and his brilliance, but it seems the plays after August and Lloyd's relationship, working relationships stop, those plays to me are much bigger, much more in the tradition of Black theater than Black drama. I'm thinking about Seven Guitars and everything after that, with the exception of like maybe Joe Turner. So I was wondering your impression.
Well, I think you're right about Joe Turner. Lloyd was almost on it right there. He got closer. I think that was the end of their relationship right after that. But Joe Turner is full of extravagant spiritual elements. Now, interesting thing with Joe Turner. It is truly compelling. I mean, it's got all of the various kind of spiritual implications, things going on. These characters are mythic characters. Bynum is clearly an archetype, an extraordinary vector for spirituality. I mean, he's clearly that. Now, I've always loved Joe Turner, no matter where I saw it. But then I saw the production with Shearer, the white director in New York. And everybody in New York, all my black peers and friends, this white guy do August's play. Boy, that's, you know, it was terrible. And I thought it was terrible too. I said, man, this doesn't make any sense. So I go down and look at the play, and I saw for the first time Joe Turner in a magnificent way. What's magnificent about it? The tendency is for us to fall in love with the cozy environment of sitting around that table. Right. Everything we do has to be locked down into that kind of a what do you call it? That not living room in this case, rooming house mode. And he had the table there. I'm sure had that, but he also had a design created that could fly elements of the house out, like windows open up, table disappear. When those things happen, he created what kind of space? Sacred space or ritual space. Not sacred, but ritual space. In other words, the ritual began to open up. I know that there's a lot of people would argue that it didn't open up for them. They say, well, he took away that table. But we always depend upon those guys gathering around the table. He's one of the guys.
This is difficult because
Yeah.
I had really the opposite impression.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not about, I mean, you are so eloquent in your description of the creation of the sacred, but that's not what I got in that production. In fact, what I got in that remount was really a kind of violation of the kind of dignity of the people, in which the idea of what is sacred, what is special, what you do in the table, at the table, when she's sitting on the table like it was a bar stool, kind of made what was elegant about a kind of very modest people, kind of took all of that away. I certainly hear the kind of symbolic ways in which August's work, or any playwright's work, could be represented. But I think if there's something that is compelling about all of August's writings, is that his characters, I think, had a certain kind of, and I think that was intentional. I think Lloyd wanted to make sure that these characters never became buffoons, and the women never became whores just because they were black women. And there were many ways in which that last Broadway production really traversed, for me, a lot of the sense of the humanity of the people. I mean, it was very theatrical. I thought it was like damn Disney, in the way the little sparkles came and all that.
Wait.
But I'm just saying, so that's a different.
I have absolutely in a total agreement with you with the last moment of the piece. At the last moment of the piece, the director lost
his mind.
he had no confidence that the play was doing what it was doing. Because the ritual elements he staged, I thought, were so incredibly potent and forceful, more forceful and potent than I'd ever seen it. Just by creating space for it, you know, the ritual space. But the thing that last moment in the play, if you remember, he says to, is it Bynum, that he looks like, no, he says Loomis. He says, Loomis, first of all, August asked me, I mean, when I was doing I should say this, that writers very often don't know exactly what they're doing, including, great one. Like, when August had written Joe Turner, and I had to, it was going to be published, and I had to write the afterword for that. And I did something on it, draft, and he got back to me, the publishers, and asked Mr. Harrison, what does that, when Loomis cuts himself with the knife, what is that about? I said, he's the author, he should know what it's about. So I came back to him and I said, look, to me, that's clearly not a mock suicide, but a ritual suicide. It's a ritual suicide to do it in Yoruba sense, in terms of Yoruba. You have to die and become reborn. You have to, in the ritual way, bloodletting allows you to go into a kind of a death mode, and you come out the other side clean. Exactly. That's a cleansing ritual. So August thought into it. He never asked the question again. When I saw the production, this production, when he does it, even in every production, it's understandable. At least I know the black audience understands it. When he cuts himself and he releases the blood, he goes to this rebirth kind of moment. He says, "Man, you are shining like new money." That's all you need to say. Sure, what he did, because he didn't believe that for a minute. He didn't understand that. He understood. He cut himself. And he said, "You're shining like new money." He had gold. Dropping gold leaves, gold dust dropping out of this. This is the last action in the play. The last action in the play. Gold dust dropping out. Just killed the moment. In other words, he thought that August didn't know what he was doing then. You know, how could he be shining like new money? The blood, the shining, it was just something. Right, so that's where you know, problem. But let me go to something, give you guys a nice, or maybe a summary. First, before I do that, did you have a question about the same thing, I think?
Well, no, actually, it was to this gentleman's point.
Well, go back to that, and then I can always come back to the seven.
Thank you. This is my quasi soliloquy. I went to, graduated from Tisch Stella Adler. One of my struggles was I'm an African-American actress, and I love doing Zaki, and I do Shakespeare, and it is who I am,
right.
And I do it with ease. But I'm an African-American actress that performs these pieces, whether it's Euripides or whatever. So I am always interested in this whole notion of black theater because it is real, but I'm bringing my sensibility as a black woman to the pieces, and I don't think that those things are mutually exclusive, I guess, or perhaps that has been my constant struggle from undergrad and looking at theater and looking at these plays and trying to find out, because it seemed to me when I was an undergrad, we were running from the whole idea of being the black this or the black that, but I'm from Texas. I love it all. I am a black woman from the South, and I didn't run from it. I thought it informed when I did a piece from Euripides. I thought it performed my pieces when I did Shakespeare, and I was not talking with a country twang when I did Shakespeare. So that's, I thought your position interesting.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. We have to separate out training for this enterprise called theater. Training requires that you have a grasp of the language, particularly the one that you're going to use in a regular way, and you have experiences with all kinds of plays. So the classical plays, different kinds of repertoire. You know, so, but the thing that was troublesome, I think, for you, not you only, but for your time, is that there were not very many opportunities to do work that allowed your particular ethos to come forward. You had to do it, you had to find yourself through another social reference or another cultural reference. And I saw it in the most recent auditions I did in New York. Guys would get on and they said, "Oh, they said, can you do a rap?" A rap? Well, yes, I can do it. I can do it. I said, "That's terrific." I said, "How come you do that?" You know, he says, "Well, nobody's ever asked me to do that before." You know, in other words, they get so caught up in learning, becoming the good instrument for the standard or popular conventional American theater, that they tend to forget who they are and how to use what they've got. And they keep transplanting themselves into this other mindset and body. My actors and macdaddy worked 6 weeks altogether. It took them 4 to 5 weeks just to find the rhythms in the text. Wow. Did not know how to get those rhythms. Because they were not born when macdaddy was was first done. That to me was absolutely amazing. You know, I mean, kids would say, how do you, well, what does this mean? How do you say this? So what are you talking about? Just say it. Let me give you an example. Here's a good example. The young lady says, don't put your hands on me, you don't know me. So she says, don't put your hands on me, you don't know me. Don't put your hands on me, you don't know me. Don't put your hands on me, you don't know me. I said, my dear, how does your aunt say that? How does your mama say it?
Right.
How does no. I said, try it out. I know how it goes. It goes, I have to do it this way. Did baba ti ba? Don't put your hands on me. No, you don't know me. Bido do badu. Do bada. You know, she said, oh yeah, I know that one. Try that one. That's yours. That's yours. You know. Let me go. I think who was it? I wonder. Oh, go.
Well, they've been kind of quiet.
Go ahead. That's all right.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Quick. You can ask me whatever you like.
For my clarity, I noticed you said, you were talking about Tyler doing black drama. As a playwright myself that's constantly writing black drama, what messages should be coming out of black theater if it's not black drama?
Okay, it's not a message here. It's a construction issue. It's how you manipulate the storytelling. How do you take it to a heightened place, a place of heightened receptivity, so that you can make in a larger view of that drama, of that personal drama, make a larger understanding that has collective resonance. So what happens is just to do a slice of life only is a replication, which is almost redundant. It can be amusing, and people can enjoy it on that level, but there's no reason why they shouldn't do that. I'm not saying that shouldn't be done. I mean, people go to Las Vegas and they see cartoon type things that are done, and that titillates them in a certain kind of way, and they say, it's fine, it's popular entertainment, no problem with it. But if you're talking about writing for the theater, I really believe that the theater has become cheap, and by a lot of work that's not, and I don't mean black theater, just in general, a lot of work that really belongs on television. I mean, it isn't really necessarily, shouldn't be in the theater. I don't mess with it, but you know. But this is, so that the black writers tend to follow whatever this trend is. If somebody says that Tyler Perry's work is the best way to get into your work in the theater, there's a tendency for some very good writers who understand how to manipulate stage ideas to write at that level. Write to that rather than try to explore how to get a richer work, how to get at the archetypes, how to get at the some poetic vision that's going to carry you, how to get to the new mythologies, how to create new mythologies. They don't probe far enough to get the ideas out. Yeah.
Conversation is so deep. I just want to say is like, right, you can reach for the new archetypes and the new mythology, but the people don't come see it.
That's not true.
Oh, okay, so I
Let me tell you why I say it's not true.
I should have brought stroke like I did.
No, let me tell you why it's not true.
Okay.
They go to church.
We go to church.
Great mythologies, enormous grandeur of language.
Right.
I'm talking about the Baptist church. There's no, I've rarely seen a drama or a play or a theatrical work more grand in theatrical form and style than in the black church. Now, the good doctor here might disagree with me. The good doctor doesn't like, they don't like to have it framed that way, but I'm not a church goer, so I go every time with a fresh, no, hold on to the mic for a moment, because I'm going to come right back to you. I go in with a fresh, kind of spirit. It's closed down, and it has to be opened up. And I get in there, and I see the techniques, the methodologies, the manipulation of text, how to start with the opening text. It says a parable. This is the parable. They run the parable out, and then takes the next hour to somehow bring that into your consciousness what it really means. I mean, so, and you have it, and it's always, if they did the very same parable the following week, something different would come out. So I know that we have a tolerance for high, lofty ideas and ideals and archetypes and how they serve our purposes in a daily way. This is what the church does. They serve us in a very daily way. So I mean, that's why I stopped you on that. But please go on.
And I said it was broad stroke. People don't come, but building, creating stuff that people gladly come see and freely come see, it's a constant challenge. So
of course it is. No, who said we're supposed to earn a living in this? Right? Never said we're supposed to earn a living from writing plays. Who said that? You got to keep your day gig. I'm not just joking with you. I mean, as a poet, if you have a poet in your midst, in your family, in your community, the poet ain't gonna make no money as a poet. You know that.
I'm going to give this microphone now.
Listen, it's the same thing with great musicians. A lot of great musicians, if they don't have studio work or some other kind of work, they don't get a chance to do the kind of things that they really want to do. They might not like to do the studio work, but they say, okay, I've done that, now I want to play the kind of stuff I want to play. It's not uncommon, and some people will not suddenly say, okay, I'm going to go into fusion, jazz, I'm going to do the fusion stuff so more people can come and see it. I mean, there's always the dilemma for the artist. I mean, the artist, the world doesn't owe the artist anything. The artist's got to make the world come to him. Her special insight into the experiences of other people, and at a certain moment they will come. They will come, but you cannot acquiesce to simply making mediocre experiences, dummying down your own personal insight, dummying it down to bring people into the house. That mountaintop is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. You know, I mean, and the black folks are lined up around the corner on Broadway to see it, dressed up, came on buses. And when the last speech happened, in the last 10 minutes of the play, when Angela gave her big speech, they stood up in great applause. I said, what, did they listen to the speech? Did they hear it? What are they talking about? What are they doing? You and they so mad. But I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
I'm listening and I see a huge parallel between what happened to hip hop in basically around 1992, 1993, where you had really a reversal of what I saw. You know, I'll put it like this. I think everybody kind of saw this type of thing. From 86 to 1991, you know, you had artists, X-Clan, Public Enemy, Organized Confusion, and I could go on, Hieroglyphics, lots and lots of other artists who actually were engaged in what I would say is almost like ritual drama in their music.
It was that.
And I would define the characteristics. I like the way that you laid out Neil's piece right there. But what I saw with those artists in particular was that they began with their personal narrative, and then they could take their audience. Rakim does this really well. Think of his song, The Ghetto. Think of Follow the Leader. But he could take his audience in something that's very mundane, and then engage in a journey that takes them at least to 2 or 3 different trans-temporal and trans-spatial points. Mm-hmm. It could be Africa, it could be Arabia, it could be a particular star. Mm-hmm. And to some extent, I saw really the creation of or the strengthening of an African mythos and ethos in hip-hop culture from 86 to 91, 92.
Yeah,
and then you had basically a domesticization or domestication of hip-hop by taking it back to these street dramas.
That's it.
The Chronic was the album that delivered on it. Doggy Style was the album that delivered on it. And then later on, you know, I mean, I love Big, but Ready to Die basically did the same thing. Even though I think he was really versed in the way that he could deliver his narratives. So just wanted to ask if you saw a particular parallel between the history of black theater and hip hop.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. What you described sounds to me exactly what happened in what was called black theater back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and up into the 90s. That's exactly what happened. And the whole, as I said, separating out movement toward not these varied expressive kind of works that are over there, but works that really laid down what they thought, and unfortunately modeled, some of them was modeled on August Wilson, they thought, but not well done. They create these little dramas, and these dramas would get all the attention. And it wasn't August Wilson, it's August's work is always poetic, it's always reaching for some higher kind of consciousness, you know. And I guess I should give you an example of one of the August pieces that I find which really describes my relationship to what the theater is all about. At the same time, shows the problem. One of the plays of August is King Hedley II. It was opened on Broadway, monstrous setting, two houses on the set, big backdrop that looked like Kosovo, like a burned out community something. And then you have these characters come on, and they do some things which belong to the narrative of the thugs in the community. They steal, they do other things, and nowhere in the whole production do you get a sense that there's a purpose beyond the fact these guys are stealing. And another guy who comes on, and he's a thug, and he kills people, and he tells you about it in his story. So you got this thug life on the stage, and there's no sense of purpose of them being out there other than the thug life. One guy who says, I'm the bad MF out here in the street, you know? And the play didn't do well. They were after 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours, and you're looking at this and say, well, what the hell? I saw it half a dozen times. I saw it in Pittsburgh, I saw it in several different cities before I got to Broadway. And every time I talked to August about it, yeah. I said, man, you gotta get that refrigerator off the stage. You know, you got it off the stage. By the time we got to Broadway, they got the refrigerator off the stage. I mean, it was all kinds of stuff. All right. When I began to look at the piece much more carefully, I saw a way to do it so it would have some real purpose. So the underlying ritual was there. My idea of doing it, which I have actually had the opportunity to do, again, only at a university, because I wanted to do it in a commercial house. The guy would not let me do what I wanted to do. I said, first of all, that play is all inside the language. It's all inside the poetic language. It's all inside, it has to impact, has to resonate the audience. You cannot indulge it. Like the guys did in New York, and that one big speech, he started crying. I said, hey, guy, what's he doing? He's killing this play, you know. But what the play is about this, I told my company, I asked them first of all, what is the play about? This play is about this guy, and he's going to kill this guy, and he wants to run, and he moved across it. The director on Broadway told me the play was about drive-by shootings. He told me that the day after the opening. I met him at the airport. I said, what do you think the play is about? He said, Paul, you didn't get it. It's about drive-by shootings in the 80s or 70s or something. I said, that's what it's about? You think it's about drive-by shootings? Oh, no wonder it got you screwed up. All right, here's what I'm telling you what the play is about. If any of you know the play, there's this very this strong, the first out the box, straight up, comes a figure, comes up. First of all, there's a griot figure. The griot figure comes out, and he tells everyone what's going to happen. This is what's happening, and we're going to turn this whole thing is going to spin out. So right away, I know I'm in Africa. Right away, I see an African. This is the opening beat. The griot comes out. Things are going to happen. Things are going to change. He feeds the animals. You know, that whole gesture, the whole symbolic gesture, feeding these other forces in the community. and he goes off. Then comes this potent figure. He is called King. King comes down, he breaks up the ground with his feet in a ground where nothing's supposed to grow. He breaks it up, puts seeds in the ground. Wow, what a gesture. You mean he's going to be procreative in this? He's going to be procreative? He breaks the ground, puts a seed, and his mother comes out and says, nothing grows there. He said, it'll grow. Put some water on it. He's doing this for his wife. That's how the play opens up. Then we find out, at a certain moment, that Aunt Esther died. And the rest of the play is about bringing back Aunt Esther. How old is Aunt Esther? 300 years old.
Right.
She's 300 years old. Well, who are you burying? You're burying an ancestor. The town, the community is in collapse, in disarray. It's falling apart. The whole play is spent really getting the right ritual stuff for the resurrection of Aunt Esther through the cat that was buried. Every part of the play is about getting the right stuff, some paper, some seeds, and something. But they must have, the most important thing is the best blood they can find for it. The best blood does not mean good in the moral sense. It means the most potent blood in it. Who then has the most potent blood in that community? The same man who can do a procreative gesture in a ground where nothing grows. He has the blood. So what is the task of the people who surrounds him? Is to get his blood on that grave so the ancestor will come back and bring what to the community? Harmony that is breaking down. That's what that play is about. So I told my actors, you are all Orishas. You are all Orishas. You each have a function. And I can tell you the archetype that you belong to. There you, one was the trickster figure, one was Yemenya, one was Oshun, one of the Ogun, with the medal, all the gestures, everything. Ogun has the medal, he has the pistol. So that in the end of the piece, so I told my people, come out, hit your marks, give your statement. It was like a Greek drama. It ran like a Greek play. You come out, do your piece, you move right away. They come back, Ogun has to ultimately shoot the boy. The boy goes down, his blood is there. No, I'm sorry, not him, he didn't shoot him, the mother. The mother shoots, bang, goes down, blood is there, and there's an invocation to the spirit by his best friend. I told the actress, it was very, we worked something like 4 or 5 weeks on this, and that this is an automatic response as the mother. It's her responsibility to get that blood. Bang, boom, goes down, and she's supposed to sit down and sing Red Sails. Just sit down, Red Sails in the Ocean. What does Red Sails in the Ocean mean? What is that gesture? That song didn't play for me when I saw it on Broadway. Well, why Red Sails on the Ocean?
Are they talking about the Middle Passage?
Absolutely. August is inferring the Middle Passage. And the what on the Middle Passage? The blood on the Middle Passage. That's what he's doing. She sits down, bang, the blood drop. Red Sails on the Ocean. Now my actress, who very studied actress, she was one of the professionals in the company. She worked, she was every rehearsal. I'm so fascinated by the challenge of all this, you know. My being this mother, and I'm just doing this, I'm playing this out, this Orisha. It's wonderful. In that particular moment, in the opening night, she shot him and she did this. Oh no. So I went backstage and then that's I said, what the hell was that? Where did that come from? She said, well, you know, after cursing all that, my instinct is the mother came over me, and I just let it hang out like. In other words, my point here is simply, I know you want to get us out of here. My point is simply this.
Not really.
My point is this. In that particular way I'm describing it, there is this underlying ritual. The whole thing only played for 2 hours and 15 minutes, by the way. The whole thing. The whole thing. It was potent, powerful, because I concentrated on the language. That the language, the poetic language, let it rise to the top. Get all the flourishing stage stuff out of the way. Let's look at what's happening with these particular characters and how they, how to come manifest. I mean, that speech, I told the guy who was doing the long 5-page speech, John Coltrane. I said, let me play some Coltrane for you. He said, like that? I said, play that. Different, totally different. And so I'm just trying to show you that in August's work, all these ritual elements, and you have to search them out and find it and do it so they not become equated with Arthur Miller.
Absolutely. What a night, what a night.